Hello and welcome to the SurveYOUR podcast with James Baker and Jon Lever. Two chartered surveyors embarking upon a social media journey, locked in a virtual room with nothing better to do than to discuss everything surveying. And some things not.
Hi everyone, welcome to the next episode of the SurveYOUR podcast. We've got a special guest on today. For those that have listened to some previous episodes, we've got Sam Nicholson with us. So I'll come on to talking about what we are going to be discussing with Sam today. But before we get any further, I'll hand over to Jon.
Yeah, hi James, hi Sam. So we've had some more feedback, which is great. And it was aptly in relation to Lifeboat Man, which was our podcast that we did with you, Sam, earlier. And this one was, Akutu Nicholson said, nice one, Sam. So again, yeah, only you're getting the mention.
Obviously.
So, for those of you out there who want to give us some feedback, give us all a shout out. And
we should probably say at this point, Jon, that the stars of the podcast are our guests and not us. But but we do like to think it's us.
Fair enough. No, I'll take that on board and duly put back in my box. And I'm assuming Akuta, it says Nicholson, so there's no relationship there.
No, I'm sure there'd be many other Nicholsons that probably wanted to comment, but this one isn't a relation now.
Right, okay. And missing an H, obviously, in the name.
And missing the H, yeah.
And the other one, Mark Bodger, which obviously is nowhere near related, says, brilliant, well done, Sam, look forward to listening. So there we go. So and I think I'll read brilliant, well done, Sam, Jon, and James. I look forward to listening. So there you go. So that's cool. Good. All right. So yes, so that's our feedback. As always, we always value people's feedback. Go to survepod.com and there's a form on there you can fill in if you want to. Tell us about some articles, or even let us know if you'd like to come on. We'd be more than happy to have different people on the podcast. So cool. So I'm going to hand back to you, James.
Thanks, Jon. Thanks for the comments, guys. So keep them coming in. We like to hear from people. People are listening, and what you want to give us some ideas, as Jon said, or even if you want to come on, let us know. So today we've got Sam, as I mentioned, and we're going to be talking to Sam about changing careers in his 30s today. So we'll start off then, Sam, just a bit of background. And how long have you been involved in surveying?
So when I finished university, I did about 8-9 months part-time at a local SME that was dealing with some framework agreement stuff, some local authority stuff, but that was part-time. Had a gap of somewhere between 8 and 9 years, and then now I'm back into surveying. I've just passed a year and a half.
That's quite a gap, isn't it? So yeah, okay. So why part-time, just out of interest? Was it just you wanted to kind of do other things, or?
That was not the only thing, but that was the deal that was being arranged.
All right.
So it was the same company I did my placement with, and they actually got in contact with me and asked if I could help out with the project that we're doing, this framework agreement. So I jumped at the opportunity, and yeah, that lasted about, give or take, 8 or 9 months.
Okay, so you did that for 8 or 9 months. So I guess the next thing we then say is, so what did you do for the 9 years in the gap then, I suppose? Between, that's quite a long gap as well, isn't it? Going surveying. Did you do a surveying course as well?
Sorry, say that again. Did I do a surveying?
Do a surveying course as well?
Yep. Building surveying at university. So
you did the building surveying course, and then you went into doing some work, and then you just decided there are other things to go and do. How old were you at the time, just out of interest?
So I'm early 20s, 21, 22, I guess.
Oh, right.
Somewhere around there.
So there's other things that all of a sudden have captured your excitement, I can tell. Okay, so what did you do in the other thing we got there? So what were you doing before getting involved in surveying then, in more current day terms? So what did you do in that gap?
So kind of we could work forwards or backwards, but work backwards. So before I came back into surveying and where I am now, I worked for Maersk, the Danish shipping company that you see. Everybody, if you've seen Captain Phillips, then Maersk means something to you. If you've seen a container with a blue star on the side, that's Maersk. They own 50% of containers worldwide, this sort of thing. You see the big container ships everywhere. So I was working for Maersk, based in Newcastle, and they still do, but I was training people who work on wind farms, onshore and offshore. Training some seafarers, training people who worked on oil and gas platforms and things like that. So I did that for about 5 years.
What were you training them?
Say again, sorry.
What were you training them?
So each industry has its minimum standard courses that everybody has to have depending on your role. So that could be working at heights or being safe at heights. It could be first aid courses. It could be sea survival. It could be how to drive the rescue boat, advanced first aid, rescue techniques, and many other things that fall in between that.
Okay.
So
how did you fall into that training then? Because I'm guessing you would have been trained on it yourself. Did this link in from the sort of doing the RNLI stuff?
It did, yeah. So initially, to link back to a previous episode when we talked about being on the lifeboat, I'd got a lot of experience from lifeguarding and lifeboat in terms of first aid, rescue techniques, the sea survival, how you rescue people. So that was the kind of the entry point for me to come in and start to teach people in the industry about it. And I think every job that I looked back, and every job that I've had has always been through knowing a person, as opposed to formally applying for someone and someone said, "Oh, I've heard of this job and I've heard of that." And it was a friend of a friend that that I knew from being down on the beach, and he said, "Oh, we've got some jobs coming up. What do you think?" And kind of unintentionally slid into the role, and then it progressed and progressed.
It just goes to show, James, network is anywhere from a bloke he knows down the beach.
That's it. Whilst you're surfing,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Bumped into this guy. We're making sandcastles together, and he's job at Merck.
Well, I wouldn't say there was sandcastles, but maybe some. Maybe something a bit more professional. They are alive.
Whilst he's there on the beach waxing his boat.
Careful now, there are people out there who professionally make sandcastles for a living. No,
I'm sure there are, but that
we'll come across, I'm sure. So, okay, cool. So Maersk, that was interesting. So that was 5 years worth. So what were the previous 4 then?
The previous 3.5, 4 years was the lifeguarding in the summer. A little bit of surf instructing as well, which was sporadic but really good fun, which we'll come back onto in a minute. And then so that was the summer, and then the winter was in the Alps in France, living in the French Alps in a place called Val d'Isère, if anybody's ever heard of it.
Yeah, we've heard of that place. And what were you doing in the Alps?
The first year I was the driver for a chalet company, so picking people up from the chalets that weren't close to the bus route or any of the lifts, and taking to the lifts in the morning, and have the middle of the day off, and then pick them back up in the afternoon and take them back to the chalet. And then the Sunday was the airport run on the bus, normally with a hangover, which wasn't the best job, but take the rough with the smooth. And then the 2 years after that, I was working in a ski shop, renting out skis and snowboards and fitting boots and things like that.
And were you skiing in between though? That's the important point.
As much as possible, yeah. That was the whole
ski or surf, or not surf, sorry, snowboard.
Snowboard, yeah. In this instance, snowboard.
I was
similar to the surfing.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd be surprised if you were a skier rather than a snowboarder.
Yeah, there's always a debate depending on.
There is always a debate.
Skiers aren't particularly fond of snowboarders, and the converse as well.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. I've only ever tried snowboarding, which I loved, on an indoor slope. And in this country, I loved it. I've never done it since, and I should have really done it since. But it was so much fun. But it was hard, much harder than it looks. Similar to the conversation we had about surfing, really. Although I was better at snowboarding than I was at surfing. It was. I've got a friend who skis, and he's very much an advocate of you shouldn't. His argument is skiing on skis you can go faster than you can on a snowboard.
You can. I definitely agree with that. I've done a lot of snowboarding, and it's all relative to who you snowboard or who you ski with, but there's always that argument between who's going to ski, who's going to snowboard. Skiing's easier to learn but harder to master, and snowboarding's harder to learn but easier to get really good at it. So there's a bit of a balance.
Yeah, I think the sad indictment is I'm half Swiss and I've never skied.
I think they're not cheap holidays to say that you can go away for a cheap holiday.
No, but I have been to Switzerland up to the age of 18. Mind you, it was summers, I suppose. We went there for 6 weeks every year. So, but yeah, that's sad, isn't it? That's not on my bucket list either, to go surfboard or snowboarding or skiing.
No, I didn't think it'd be really you, John, to be
Not
honest.
really. No, it's more of a snowball really with me. You know, sort
Very
of, it'll be
aptly timed at the
trip,
moment.
and that's it. Is done, or it'll be one trip to the slopes and 2 weeks in hospital.
That's the other side of it. Yeah.
Did you do any hospital trips as well with your driving?
I did, yeah. I grew up skiing with my family, so I tore the ligaments in my leg when I was about 11. I've broken my coccyx, broken a wrist, and then all of the muscle injuries or muscle damage as a result of falling over. I knocked myself out a few times. That was it. It's quite a good one.
Well, I have to say that's probably a positive then, because I've never broken anything, but that's probably because I've never done anything worth sort of being in a position to then break something. I've damaged a couple of ribs before, but that's just bruising. That's not really breaking anything. Okay, so obviously the excitement and the younger years of rushing off to the Alps and surfboarding and lifeguarding and all that has grasped you and dragged you in that direction. So what made you change? Did you kind of I don't like to use the term did you grow up, but did you feel I ought to start thinking about a career, or which you did with Maersk, I guess, but what was the
so I hadn't planned on not going back to the Alps for the fourth winter. I'd always planned on going back. I'd left all of my snowboards and all of my gear there on the premise that I was going back, and kind of fell into this job at Maersk, like we talked about. And although it's great fun, it's really not sustainable unless you are either really, really good and you can pass what they call a speed test. So you can be a ski instructor in France. They're really strict on who can be an instructor, whereas some other countries are a bit more lax in terms of the minimum standards. So you either have to be really good, or you have to have the ability to speak French, open a business, start X, Y, and Z, which was definitely going to be a struggle. It wasn't really sustainable. And when the job came along at Maersk, it was a really good opportunity that I didn't pass up. And at the time, actually, I had a lot of people that work away in the winters. Instead of lifeguarding in the summer, they go and work on the super yachts in France, south of France. So I was looking at that, and I had a friend who was working on the yachts, and one of their deckhands was leaving, and that was going to be another option. But I chose the job at Maersk because I think if I had got the super yachts, I would have been single, which was probably the wise move.
Oh, so there's other. I can see other factors are starting to seep into the conversation. Yeah. I think we should stop that point and obviously not pursue that any further. Now, just a little APC thing here for you, Sam, just to throw this into the mix. Can you put your pen down, mate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
A nervous click.
A bit of practice for you there.
Bit of practice for the APC, yeah. Stop clicking the flipping pen. Okay. No worries, mate. And so before I'm going to hand over to James to ask the next question, there's another little follow-up I wanted to ask. So what out of all of those 9 years has been useful in regard to surveying, I guess, as you're coming into this career now?
I think there'd be a lot of scenarios, a lot of things that would be useful. Working as part of a team and working with people from different backgrounds and different languages and ethnicity, etc., has broadened my horizons in terms of, just because I think something's the right, I think an approach is the right way doesn't mean it is the right way, and other people have their own opinion, and being open to the ideas. Working in a range of scenarios, whether it's somebody who is really excited that they want to go skiing, for instance, and all they want to do is give me the stuff and I want to run off, but there is a safety side to it to make sure that the skis come off when they're meant to come off and those sort of things. So trying to manage people's expectations when they're excited or angry. And I've mentioned this one before, but being able to talk to people and pick up body language, and if they're being truthful, if you think they are maybe kind of bending the truth, having the ability to read people or engage with people on different levels, whether they are somebody who's just renting some skis or somebody that owns a chalet company that then is going to refer hundreds of people a year, if we're thinking about the scenario there. And then the other side of it would be the lifeguarding side of people when they're in the bad end of the scale, when they need your help, or where they're angry and they've lost their kids and that sort of thing. So I think a lot of the benefits I've got from the range of jobs come to the communication, the team working, that side of it.
Yeah, and as we know, building surveyors are particularly difficult to deal with. So all very good.
2 versus 1, John. 2 versus.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would definitely not agree with that.
Well, when you start talking to QSs, then yeah, we're all a prickly bunch. So, it's probably worth doing. So that's me done, James. I'm going to hand back to you, mate.
Thanks, John. Sam, I'm sat here listening, and I find it fascinating what you've done in your life. You've really experienced quite a lot. It's fascinating.
The word envious is coming from my side rather than
I was edging towards that, really. You're kind of envious of your life.
Fantastic.
Not
Every time we do these podcasts, I leave with a huge ego and I can't walk out the door because my head's so big. It's great. We just put one of these in every month. Yeah, then I'll have no problems.
We'll give you a pep talk. Don't worry.
This won't happen. This won't happen when you do your APC. Though,
when you do your assessment, mate, it will be completely. it will balance the books for you.
Put me back in my place.
You'll not come out with a big ego from that, I assure you. Anyway, I guess my interest really from everything you've said is, I was going to say what made you get into surveying, but you kind of got into surveying, left, and then came back again. So I guess it's a double question, really. What made you go into it in the first place? What made you do your building surveying degree? But then what made you think, oh yeah, you know what, I don't want to return to surveying?
Yeah, we have mentioned the kind of the route in before it, that I had an apprenticeship when I was 16. It didn't sink in. It wasn't the penny dropped. That's not what I wanted to do. So I went back to school, but I wasn't particularly academic at school, and was towards the latter stages of sixth form. A friend was going down to Leeds to look at an open day, and I'd always had interest, and I'd done some work experience at the company that I mentioned that I worked for after university, and I'd always had an interest in how things were built, whether that was going to be in a building surveying context, whether that was going to be in some sort of surveying or something to do with the built environment. And to backtrack to maybe year 9 or 10, did some work experience with a friend who's got a building company up in Scotland, so I had a bit of insight there, and knew I didn't want to go down the apprenticeship route because I'd already tried that, and my friend opened my eyes in terms of why he was doing it, that he liked to be active, but there's still the office side of it. I think if I was just sat in an office every day, then the potential for me to kind of not progress to where I want to be, kind of get stuck at a level and not be hugely interested. But definitely in the building surveying side, and I think that a lot of building surveyors would echo this, is that there is plenty of office work, but there's also the inspection, the design work that mixes things up, and there's so many different aspects of building surveying that you can concentrate on the things you like, and maybe not concentrate on things that aren't the top of your list. So not a short answer to what got into building surveying or what got you into it.
Yeah, I mean, I can, resonate with what you've said there, really, about being a building surveyor and office time and getting out on site. You do mind nutting if I was, 5 days a week working at a desk and never getting out on site. I like sitting at my desk and doing stuff, but equally I like going and looking at buildings and getting out and about. So I can completely be on board with what you're saying there. But so what made you then think, actually, I do want to go back to this?
When I was working at Mercy, it got to the point where there wasn't anywhere for me to go. I'd started off as an instructor, then moved up the ranks in terms of being in charge of a few courses, being in charge of a few people, and the next step up from that was going to be in charge of a training centre, which wasn't a million miles away. But after that, there wasn't, even though Maersk's a huge company, if the next step up would have either been moving to Aberdeen, which wasn't at the top of my list of places that I wanted to live, or it'd be kind of a move to headquarters in Denmark and things like that. And it was probably a bit far-fetched. So I came to the conclusion that although the job's been very valuable in terms of building my skill set, that it wasn't particularly transferable across to many other roles. Whereas building surveying, there's various different roles that can stem from it, and it's not too specific to locations. Whereas all the locations that I wanted to be, all the locations that I was going to be if I stayed in that job would have been wind centric. So there's quite a bit down in Hull. There's a bit across on the west coast in Barrow and Furness. Then there is stuff in Aberdeen and stuff down in Great Yarmouth, and a little bit onshore. But the majority of it's offshore now, and that was going to be quite restrictive in where I could work.
So really, it's down to, I guess, ambition, career progression, and the opportunities that it presents are more vast than what you were doing previously, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it probably took a few years for me to have the confidence in my ability that I can achieve a lot more than I initially thought.
So do you have any sort of longer term goals that you're working towards? Obviously your short term is to go through your APC, but have you thought much about where you want your career to go, and do you want to stay in your local area, or have you got ambitions to go further afield? Obviously you've lived and worked in other countries. Is that something you'd like to do again?
Just to add into that as well, maybe becoming a QS.
No, I'm not too clear on the start of the question. I'll stick with building surveyor. It's a very good question, James. I haven't
not thought about it.
I have thought about it, but I haven't come to a clear conclusion, because I don't know what's going to happen in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Relatively short term to how long I've got to be left working. I'm 33 now, and I'm expecting to be working well into my 60s. So I'm kind of only halfway through, or less than halfway through my working career. I'm not adverse to working anywhere else, and opportunities may present themselves in the future. But I think we're going to come onto this later on. The company that I'm working for in Newcastle at the minute, I can't fault at all. I can't speak highly enough of them in their support, and the experience that I'm getting there is invaluable.
Okay, fair enough. I'll let John.
Yeah, well, that leads us nicely. Nice little segue there into the next question, which is you mentioned about working for a local SME right at the beginning of your career. Then you've obviously gone and bummed around, I'm going to call it, for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And you come back to surveying. So tell us a little bit about who do you work for? What sort of job do you do at the moment?
Yes, I work for a company in Newcastle, as alluded to, and relatively small in the grand scheme of things. And type of work we do, the generic building surveying that most people think of is home buyers surveys, building surveys, that sort of things. Then on the other side, we've got the commercial stuff, so dilapidations, then party wall stuff, and project work as well. So the business has a few different avenues. I predominantly, the majority of my work falls towards the project side, which I enjoy. Not to say that I don't enjoy the other aspects, but predominantly at the moment the project side, whether that's new projects, existing stuff that the company's already got, or things that are coming in the pipeline in the coming months, is where I fit into the business.
Okay, and give us an example of a project that you've either finished recently or that you currently got your your hands into.
A recent one that's finished is a residential single-story extension with some external landscaping, some internal modifications. So that would be one example. Another one would be some more commercial work on a steel frame portal building that was, again, some internal modifications, some external decoration. Mm-hmm. As examples, we've got a few.
What sort of project, to give our listeners a kind of a feel and a thought? What's your range of project values that you're dealing with?
Project values from, I think the lower end of the scale would be about 55, 60,000.
Yeah. In
terms of the project side, all the way up to one of the larger ones at the minute will be about 250, 275-ish.
Okay. Yeah,
Such
it's a good range then. Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
such a QS question to ask.
yeah, I know.
You want some numbers?
I just need the numbers. I need to know because I will judge you on the basis of what you're. No.
A lot of QSs will judge you on the value.
Yeah.
of
So yeah,
projects.
pay no attention to them at all.
I've
Yeah,
come across building surveyors who will judge you on the value of projects that you're working on.
yeah,
It's ridiculous because
Yeah.
they're all the same. They just have different challenges.
yeah. No, absolutely. Money is really not the decider, is it? It doesn't.
No.
Money doesn't suggest complexity in any way, shape, or form. So
At all.
you know,
Good
okay.
point. Very good point.
Yeah, and I think I've probably answered the other question there, which was what have you done so far? So and you've told us that. So which of your projects have you enjoyed the most so far?
The one of the projects that's on the go at the minute is that I haven't had a huge amount of experience with, but is really interesting. Is working with a listed building. This one's grade 2 listed, but there's many additional challenges and hurdles to overcome working with a listed building, which is broadening my horizon and my knowledge, and I'm really enjoying those ones.
Okay, for those who might be listening and don't understand what one of those challenges might be with listed buildings, just give us one. What's if you know about one that you want to mention?
So it could be as simple as we've got a listed building and you want to replace the windows, then it's not as simple as, okay, just take one out, put a new one in. It has to be sympathetic. It has to be relevant to the listing. Mm-hmm. So it can be as specific as window details. It can be as specific as certain items of the fabric of the building might be listed. So they have to be retained and have to be protected during the works. Yeah. It could be a whole host of things.
Okay. And do you have someone who is an expert in the listing and the conservation, or is that something that you're getting into as well?
The people the other surveyors I went with on the project have got experience working with listed buildings of similar size and similar nature, so they understand the process considerably better than myself. But I'm definitely learning as part of that and enjoying it at the same time.
An important life lesson for you that I'm going to throw at you now, being about 20 years ahead of you, is that when your kids come along, if you're going to have children in the future, being able to point out that you were involved in that building, that you did it, is very important. So start making notes now. They won't care. They wouldn't give you two monkeys, but it's an important life lesson and a dad thing to actually point out, because as I do with my kids all the time from projects I used to work on in the past. So yeah, no.
Hey, I do it with people, just anybody. I worked on that project.
You impose that on other people as well.
I'll just impose it on people if I'm with them. Yeah. I'll just say.
A lot of friends then, James. Have we a lot of friends?
Yeah, I got loads of friends. Yeah.
Right, James, I'm handing back to you, mate.
So just in your work then, Sam, obviously you're in a small practice. What sort of size is the business that you work in? How many employees?
There's 6 of us at the moment.
Okay, so nice and small then. So do you find that your work is quite local in your local area, or how far do you tend to get instructions?
The majority of the work is within the local area. I'd say give or take an hour commuting wise. That's not to say that we don't get instructions further afield. We had project to start last year that was up in the Borders, so a little bit further away, and we do some dilapidation work which can go down towards Leeds and across to the west coast, and again up to the Borders in theory.
Okay,
but the majority of the work's kind of centric to Newcastle area. Yeah,
fairly sort of. It's nice. I mean, I've done jobs at various different sized businesses throughout my career, and some of it's meant UK-wide travel, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and further afield in some roles, international. And then others have been very much just the local, neighbouring counties rather than anything else. And I tend now, working for myself now, I tend to have a relatively smaller area of work. I don't go too far, although was up in Cheshire and I've got some work in London and things, so tend to do, you go where the work is, but I tend to find it's a sort of similar thing. Smaller practice tends to be more local. Right, well, we've discussed all these different jobs that you've had. Have you got a favourite one? Obviously it's surveying, but have you got a favourite one?
A favourite surveying job or
No, a
favourite
favourite
job in
job.
general?
Favorite job in general. And just on that note, if you can hear a big vibration, my next door neighbours decided they're going to start digging their drive up.
We can't hear it, John.
Yeah, I
That's
haven't
all
picked
right
up on
then.
it yet.
I'm just kind of sitting here going, it sounds like they're winding up a whacker plate out there. I might just go out with a baseball bat and have a go at it myself. But yes, no, it's been going for 3 days. It's fantastic. Love it. Building, and they didn't just get a little bloke in with a shovel. Oh no, let's get a JCB in. I tell you, the driveway is about 3 meters square. And we've got diggers, we've got 4-man crew, we've got
is there a crane
turning up? No, we haven't got a crane, funnily enough.
Any dynamite?
No, but the Kango, well, Kango, it wasn't a Kango, it was a proper full-on compressor jackhammer yesterday, shaking the whole house, and it was just like I was in the middle of something. So if you can hear anything in the background, I'm glad you can't, but if you can, or wonder what I'm doing looking out the window, that's why.
And what are they doing, just resurfacing?
They're
They just fill in a little crack.
Yeah, seriously, it is a 3 meters by 3 meters, bit of tarmac, a bit of grass. They're digging it out, put a hogging down, bit of type 1 or whatever, and then I believe they're putting pave wires over the top. But it sounds like they're rerouting the M1 through here at the moment.
Wow. Well, we can't hear it, John. So
well,
my
question.
Right,
so sorry to cut across, but it's all about me, no one else. So I didn't want Sam to get too much of the airtime, of course.
So my question, just to refresh your memory, Sam, was what is your favourite job? So all these jobs you've had, you've obviously been a lifeguard, you've worked for Maersk, you've worked in ski chalet, ski resorts, you've done all these different things. Do you have a favourite job other than? I mean, you can say surveying because obviously it is, but
not surveying.
Well, surveying's the one that's going to stick. Surveying the one that's going to fulfil the ambition, etc., etc. But in terms of the most enjoyable one is being a surf instructor, which is, it's at times you get paid for doing what you like. Obviously, you're not just surfing. You've got to look after people and you're going to give them some instruction, but at the same time, you can go and catch a few waves and it's normally outside. Obviously, people don't have the best view of Newcastle for surfing and weather-wise, but in the summer it does get above 11 degrees. And the ice on the top of the water does break every couple of weeks.
I mean, that must be positively balmy in Newcastle, Sam. I've been in Newcastle in the middle of winter on a night out, and some folk out there really don't wear a lot of clothing.
I was going to say it's but almost illegal to wear a jacket on a night out in Newcastle. It's very frowned upon.
Yeah, I don't remember having anywhere to put your coats.
No such thing. There's
no such thing as a coat in Newcastle.
I tell you, coming down south, it's particularly tropical.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, good answer that, Sam. I mean, basically, you get paid to surf, so I guess what's not to love?
What's not
to like?
Yeah. John, I'll hand over to you for our soon-to-be developing famous question.
Yes, absolutely. We always like a little good old would you rather question. So your would you rather question, Sam, we've got is, would you rather be a surveyor or fly jet fighters?
I think if I had the ability to fly jet fighters, it's a bit more exciting than surveying buildings. Not that there's not excitement to be had from surveying listed buildings and etc. But I don't have the best vision. I wear contact lenses.
Yeah.
I think I'm maybe towards the taller end of the scale, being over 6 foot in terms of it. I'm definitely not the same height as Tom Cruise. So if I had the ability, I'd love to fly jet fighters, but I think being realistic, building surveying's for me.
Yeah, and I think building surveying's got as much risk in it as jet fighters as well. I think.
At the minute.
Certainly is. I mean, I think I've kind of conjured up another thought for us as well. Obviously, career, where you're at with your APC and your career development. How's the last? I'm going to throw a COVID question in here. So how's the last? I guess it's nearly a year. It'll be a year that I fellowed my staff in March. So that's not long away. That's 6 weeks away. So we're going to definitely be in this still in March. How's that impacted on your sort of career development, APC? Has it at all, or is it? I'll stop asking the question now. How's it impacted?
The most obvious effect it's had is that I was furloughed for a short period of time, and that hasn't allowed me to record days, culminating towards sitting my APC. So I think that's just pushed me. In theory, I probably could have sat session 1 this year if I didn't have any furlough, but we've mentioned this before, that having that extra 6 months isn't really the end of the world. I want to be ready to do it. I don't want to just do it for the sake of it. And on the other side, the other pros and cons, most of the time I like working from home. It means I don't have to commute. I still spend a bit of time in the office, and I still go out to site, out to survey and things like that, but not having to commute, even though it's only half an hour each way a day. I may as well spend that half an hour, whether it's to do with having output at work, or whether it's to do with some studying, or changing a summary of experience example. So there's benefit that on that side. And there's not that many negatives, I think. I mean, I'm very lucky that I've still got a job. I'm very lucky that our business is still busy, and there's all the other kind of positives to hold on to, as opposed to many negatives that I can think of it on the spot.
Yeah, interesting. And do you think that your future working will be more home sort of based? James and I have got a topic that we want to look at in one of our future podcasts, which is, there's some articles out there we've read about the future of working and how people are going to work. How does that work with the company you're with at the moment? Have they sort of thought it through, or do they want to see bums back on seats, as it were?
I haven't had any definitive conversations, but the general feeling that I get is that there'll be. So previously, I wasn't really working at home much unless there was a need for it, whether there was a delivery coming or the boiler was getting serviced. You needed to spend some time at home. It was more, let's be in the office. And I think in the future, there'll be the ability to work from home a bit more. But as I'm talking out loud, the only obvious negative that I can think of is not having someone just to run something by that's right in front of you. Even though I can pick up the phone anytime, it's not the same as just, would you mind having a look at this? Or I'm thinking about this, and having it to bounce ideas off somebody who's in the same room. So that would definitely be a negative that's just popped to mind. Yeah. But I think to go back to your question, I think there'll be a lot more ability, or a lot more option to work from home in the business where I am, but I think that'll be a universal approach.
No, I think things are going to change a little bit in the future for everybody, to tell the truth. So, no, interesting. Okay, any last questions, James? Well,
I was just going to say, you mentioned there, Sam, that obviously you look to have a job, etc., and you said that your employer, your company is busy. So have you found I guess the start of this year, and probably back end of last year into this year, because we obviously had lockdown, which caused, almost a year ago, which caused a lot of disruption. Certainly you were early in terms of construction and access to property and all sorts of things for what building surveyors do. But then I think the guidelines came out, the government suggested that construction should continue, what we do should continue. How have you found, coming into lockdown in January, how have you found the start of this year as a business? Are you finding inquiries still coming through? Are you keeping busy? How's the pipeline looking?
So initially, when we had the initial lockdown, it was hard. I think everybody probably was in a similar position. It's hard to forecast which way it was going to go. A construction site's just going to close? Is it going to be a certain size that can stay open? Is it only if you've got anything to do with healthcare that you continue building? What were the parameters going to be? So that was initially a little bit worrying, a worry of the unknown. But then as soon as the announcement that construction sites can continue, within the day, the phone was ringing off the hook of people, especially now people are spending so much time in their houses and they haven't been away on holiday, that they want to knock that wall down. I want to put an extension here. I want to go up into the loft. And that hasn't really slowed down as a result of any of this, the following lockdown, whether number 2 or the most recent number 3. So we're still getting plenty of inquiries from the project side. As you'd expect, initially the survey side slowed down, but then the changes in stamp duty, that had an effect. And then again, the phones were ringing and surveyors being booked up for weeks and weeks and weeks ahead. So I think initially a little bit of a disturbance, but then now maybe into a bit of a rhythm that we're still pretty busy.
Yeah, good. That's certainly what I found. I mean, I have my feet in two camps in respect of sort of resi market and commercial market, and I'm busy in both sectors, really, if you like. I've got stamp duties coming to an end in March, and I know there's talk. I've not seen what the latest on it is, but there was talk that maybe those that were already in the pipeline will continue on the stamp duty holiday. Whereas if you've obviously not got through, you've not had an offer accepted, you're not through the process, then stamp duty will, be back to what it was previously. But I've noticed in the last sort of week or two, loads more, resi survey instructions just seem to be coming out, because maybe people are just starting to panic and think, well, I need to get this done whilst I can.
Yeah.
So I've noticed that. But then likewise, the commercial side of things doesn't seem to slow down either. There's plenty of work coming through. So it's good. It's great, I think. And long may it continue. And it's rare. And me and John have probably mentioned this in a previous podcast, but normally construction in any recession is hit quite hard. And yet, obviously, hospitality has been the worst hit probably in this pandemic. And I guess it isn't a normal recession, but construction wise, we do seem to have been lucky, shall we say, in that we seem to be doing okay. So hopefully that will continue.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, though, isn't it? Because in past recessions, and how many have I lived through now? Probably 3. It's been hard. The industry's taken a hammering, but where we are currently, certainly with those in hospitality, they've just been decimated, haven't they?
Yeah.
And only through, I guess, the furlough and the government sort of schemes, people have still maintained or still have a premises to work out of as and when we come out of it. I think also lockdown 3.0, as they're calling it, everyone was a bit unsure, weren't they, in March, not really sure what was going on. Everyone seems to have kind of got into their stride now and got the grasp. I mean, we're quite, as a business in training, we're quite a good sort of barometer for how any industry is doing, or certainly how our industry is doing, because training and the construction industry are the first 2 things that tend to go in a recession. So the fact that we're still here, which is great, thank goodness. We've seen the same as you guys. I think we're a bit slower in the upturn, because obviously companies have to decide they have work before they then want to carry on with training. But we've certainly, the front end first quarter this year, seen some interesting noises and moves. So I still have staff. One of my staff still partially furloughed, but the other one's back full time now. So that's a good sort of barometer as well, where we're going. So no, interesting. I mean, I've got another question to throw in, if I may, Sam, which is just a thought, and obviously you probably can't answer this. Well, you won't know because it's a future sort of navel gazing question. What's future aspirations? What do you fancy getting into? And I'm obviously not dissing your current employer. Do you want to stay there? Is it something you fancy doing your own business one day, or actually you want to do that sort of surveying in the future? I mean, it's very much a crystal ball.
It's a really good question to catch me on the off guard. I thought
it was a nice one to throw in at the end. So,
see if I can work.
I didn't want to let you down. Yeah, but be careful what you say, because we're going to tell your employer.
I'm sure they'll pick up. They're going to be listening at some point anyway. I'm sure. And without meeting your expectations, as I've alluded to earlier on, that the company that I'm at the moment is, I can't fault them at all, and I've got no reason to at the minute anyway. You can't predict it in the future. I've got no reason to be looking elsewhere. I'd like to stay there, and I'd like to progress and maybe one day become one of the partners.
Well, there is that opportunity, isn't there? As always, I guess, with any business. Yeah. I mean, sorry to take you out of the limelight for a moment and stop putting you on the spot. I left or I chartered. How old was I? 25, and I thought I'll stay working with a large QS firm. I'll never want my own business. Age 31, made redundant, had my own business, and here we are. So, life can throw things at you, but just aspirationally, don't worry about, I'm going to leave my employer as soon as I pass my APC. No, that's not going to happen. But the point is, would you fancy having your own company in the future? Is it something you kind of want to get your teeth into, be your own boss and all those? I mean, James has done this recently, haven't you, James? So
I have.
And that's 10 years further down the line than you are. So, it's sort of what do you fancy doing?
Yeah, that's within the area of where I'm aiming. I mean, I wouldn't have changed careers if I didn't have aspirations and want to proceed and progress. I could have stayed where I was and been comfortable. To kind of backtrack, I took a considerable pay cut to go back into surveying with the forethought that eventually it will catch itself up. And my family own a butcher's shop and my sister, and it's in its 4th generation, and run a butcher's shop that my sister's taken over in the last 6-7 years. So running a business is something that I not necessarily understand, but I've got experience of because of being brought up in a household that runs a business.
Yeah. I worked in a butcher's shop.
See,
There you go.
I'm only the delivery boy. I don't get trusted with knives or anything like that.
Oh no, mine was it was a company called Saxby's, which was more of a deli stroke pork butchers. So yeah, sort of a Friday and Saturday job. So
yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm going to say that this is the best butchers in the world. Nicholson's Butchers in Whitley Bay. My name's above the door. If you're ever passing Whitley Bay in the northeast, you must pay a visit.
I'll make sure next time I'm in your part of the world, Sam, I'll pop in.
Yeah. A good butcher's shop. It's always good.
Of course, it is important to point out that, you know, being your own boss, you did mention, obviously, with your current employer, that doesn't always mean that you have to start your own business, because you can obviously buy into somewhere. I mean, that was probably when I was maybe about your age, a little bit older, I was made redundant. Was it? No, I probably was about your age, or maybe slightly younger, around 30 when I was made redundant. And I did a little bit of sort of freelancing type work and self-employed, and then went back into full-time employment with no aspiration to run my own business at that point. I started out in my career, always wanted to run my own business, then changed my mind completely. And then obviously here I am today with my own business sort of 5 months in. And that kind of has only come about because, one, I wanted a certain type of lifestyle to be in control of my own career, because I'd pursued a number of roles hoping that they would lead to maybe becoming partner or, you know, shareholder, whatever, of the businesses that I worked in, which never happened through nobody's fault, really. Just, you know, circumstances don't always work out. And just made the decision last year that actually, if I was going to really get to where I want to get with my career, but also my personal life, it was the way to go. So yeah, you never know what's going to happen, but
yeah, there's many unknowns in the future, but aspirational wise, that's where I'm heading. Whether it changes in the next few years, in 10 years,
it's good aspiration to have those, Sam.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's nice. I mean, I don't think any of us even now, well, it's very much in the short term. None of us really know what's going to happen around the next corner. And short-term business planning is now 6 weeks, not 6 months. So you know, so it's an interesting experience. Now the next thing is, when am I going to get my vaccine? Which I think I'm going to get before you guys, just given the fact
I don't think there's any think about it, John. I think
I'm just older and fatter.
Yeah, I haven't checked where I am in the list.
You're probably 35,423 and 35. I'm about the 24 million at the moment.
That may well have changed now, though, John, because the rate that they're getting the vaccination rolled out,
about 1 million a week, isn't it, at the moment?
Well, yeah, so many happening per day and everything.
Or is it a day? Million a day, not million a week?
No, I don't know how many it is a day, but it is a huge amount per day.
It's 1 million a week.
Is it 1 million a week? Yeah. Right. Okay.
Which is a huge amount.
Yeah, but that's quite a long time still, isn't it?
That's you want to check the vaccine calculator again.
Yeah, we need to go back to the vaccine calculator. That's not too much fun, wasn't it? Maybe we should do that every podcast. The vaccine calculator. I'm now 40,000.
I don't think people need to hear about that, John. I think there's enough. I think we're light relief from the news.
Yeah. Maybe it'll just be another feature on its own. John's vaccine calculator.
John's vaccine calculator. Yeah. We'll just put it on the website, John. Underneath.
Yeah. Maybe we should check that. So that's cool. Okay, well, I'm done, James. I'm out of questions. Yeah. That was really interesting, though. Thanks for that, Sam. Really appreciate it.
That's okay. Like I said, I finished these sessions with a huge egos. So
maybe we should have a podcast that is "Let's Take Sam Apart" podcast and make it feel really uncomfortable.
Maybe we should do an APC mock interview.
No, we're not
tearing to pieces.
Yeah, that would be the one.
I'm busy that week.
Yeah,
we can do it. But we're not recording it. No way.
Oh, very good. Anyway, brilliant. Thanks ever so much. And as always, we always remind everyone, don't forget to visit our website, so podcast.com. Not podcast.com, servepod.com. What am I like? Servepod.com, and all the links to all the various players, and you can listen to it on the website as well. But also give us some feedback. We'll
imagine if it was podcast.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So podcast.com is us. No, servepod.com.
Not us, people. Not us.
No, not us. No, probably other people and probably dodgy websites. But as always, James, we always tell everyone, don't we? So make sure you wash your hands.
And don't look any strangers.
Don't look any strangers. Absolutely. Cheers, Sam. Thanks ever so much. Yes, and we'll catch up with you again soon, I'm sure. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello there, and thank you for joining us for our latest episode of the SurveYOUR podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed making it. Don't forget to subscribe at all your favourite podcast providers, Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio and so on. Also on Twitter and Instagram at SurvePod, that's SurvePod. You can also get us on YouTube, click the subscribe button, and don't forget to click the little bell, it tells you when we post our latest content, and on our webpage, survepod.com. Don't forget to leave us your reviews, comments, suggestions, and of course any questions. And finally, if you want to come along, join us at a future episode of the SurveYOUR podcast, send us an email to survepod@gmail.com. If you like what you see and hear, tell your friends, let's put surveying on the map. Stay safe, wash your hands, and don't lick any strangers. Bye-bye for now. The SurveYOUR podcast is a copyright Deliver and Envious Limited production. We suggest you come up with your own ideas and not copy ours. Thank you. Catch you again soon. Bye-bye.